Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we're gonna take a look at a few things that are happening in the growth space. I wanna make some updates on some projects that I started, also talk about some things that I am planning to do and show you a few things that my orchids and not only are doing. So it's going to be pretty much a mixed bag, which I cannot actually make separate videos on, but I would still like to share these things with you guys. So with that said, let's just start with an update on the dragon's blood treatment. So a couple of months ago, I made an order at Orchid Garden, and one of the orchids, this cattleya, looked horrible. It really didn't handle transport well. I'll link it down below the video if you missed it and would like to see how this orchid started. And well, I cleaned up the orchid and I decided to try the dragon's blood solution just to seal off a cut pseudobulb. Now, if you don't know what this solution is, well, theoretically it is a food supplement. I'm not saying I'm taking this. I'm not into supplements as it is, so don't understand that I'm promoting this as what it's intended to be. But there are a few YouTubers which use it to seal off wounds or treat crown rot or things of the sort. So I received this from Jessica because I wanted to try it anyway, and I placed it on one of the cut wounds that I made in one pseudobulb, and well, the result was absolutely horrible. I will link you to that update down below as well. What happened was the substance is actually pretty strong and it started to attack the remaining pseudobulb. It entered the sap flow and really damaged the tissue. What I had to do was make another cut into clean tissue somewhere where I thought the solution didn't reach, and in this way I did manage to save the pseudobulb, which, let me try to give you a much better close-up. Here it is. I managed to save it, as you can see. Just a little stump, but it's okay, it's enough because I have the available eyes there. And the greatest news, I think you can see here, we are also producing a tiny little root, which means that the base of the pseudobulb is okay. Now, this damage actually happened super fast, within 2 days or so. So I managed to act fast, and today the pseudobulb is saved. So at least when it comes to cut wounds in pseudobulbs or big structures, let's say, I would definitely not use this. It's so strong, it damages tissue. I will never ever use it as sealing a wound, a pseudobulb, even a leaf. No, I shall stick to cinnamon. However, I did continue to test this off camera on crown rot. I had 2 cases actually. The first case is this Phalaenopsis orchid, which was actually at the bottom of my shelf, and even though I am generally careful, sometimes these things happen. A few drops of water must have fell from the orchid above or from my pump sprayer, reached the crown and started to rot it. At least I think it was crown rot. 2 of the leaves fell and I actually noticed it in time, and I applied a drop of the solution right in the crown. And when the solution dries, let me try to brighten up the image here. If you can see inside, I do have sort of brown sticky substance there. When this thing dries, it becomes very sticky, practically doesn't actually dry out. So I did put a drop or 2 in the crown, and as you can see, I do believe I managed to stop the infection. Moreover, the crown was not completely affected, so this orchid is managing to start producing new leaves from the very same crown, which I have to say is a very good result. I am quite happy with how this worked. This is, however, not the only crown rot orchid that I have. This is a Neophanetia hybrid. It is the Lucenary. I purchased it again a few months ago, and something must have happened on transport. All of the crowns of this orchid actually rotted. They started to lose leaf by leaf, so I thought to try the dragon's blood treatment. There was nothing left to lose, really. And I have to say, again, it worked. I think you can see here in the crown this brown residue. That's where I placed the dragon's blood. I actually used a toothpick to direct the drop inside. As you can see, the leaves are folded. In this case, though, the infection managed to destroy the crown, but the orchid is doing what any crown rot orchid does. It's starting to push out keikis. Can you see it right here? Yeah, that's a lovely little keiki. So I do believe the orchid is saved. The crown is compromised, so the orchid is starting to push out keikis, but that's okay. Yet again, though, the dragon's blood worked. So, final thoughts. I do believe this substance is rather potent. I would not put it on big cut wounds, cut pseudobulbs, even cut leaves. I think it will enter the sap stream and it will start to damage the tissue more than you want. but I will definitely continue to use it on rotting, let's say, instances, such as crown rot, definitely, where you actually want it to destroy quite a lot of the tissue. Part of solving the crown rot issue means destroying the tissue. That is why we use the hydrogen peroxide to eliminate the fungal spores and part of the affected cells, and then cinnamon to dry things faster. That's why that treatment works as well. This, however, is quite a lot easier to use in crown rot situations. I will play with it in other rotting situations that might arise, and I shall keep you up to date. But for now, even though there are only 2 cases and maybe not very conclusive, I am enjoying this product in this instance. But again, definitely I do not recommend you use this as a sealant. Stick to cinnamon or even a wax, or I started to use actually hot glue and it works great. But definitely when you're dealing with rot, pretty much nothing left to lose, right? I think this stuff is actually pretty neat. Alrighty, next subject. Next up, a Phalaenopsis orchid you guys didn't know I had. I didn't know I had either because it is mislabeled. So yet again, Orchid Garden. I purchased this orchid quite a while back, and this is the ID, Phalaenopsis Yen Shuai Sweet Girl Variety Shiny Girl. This was supposed to be a yellow orchid with a pink lip and white in the center. I actually lost my hybrid that I found locally like that, so that's why I purchased it, and behold, what is this? I don't know. Does anybody know? Well, it kind of looks like an orchid that I found while trying to Google an ID. It looks like Diamond Beauty, but that's just a guess. I'm pretty sure it's not. I don't know what this is, and I don't even know if it's a novelty. It might just be a very young orchid which did not produce a very, very big flower spike, because it looks very, very much like a harlequin with a yellow background. So far, I don't really detect any fragrance. This might actually develop in the future, hopefully, which will give me a hint that this is actually a novelty hybrid. The flower is indeed waxy, but I've seen this type of flower before, I have to say, and if I'm not mistaken, I think I recently saw it in a flower shop, but it had a different shape to it. It didn't have a tiny flower spike with a few flowers. It was the typical standard shape, so I have to say, I'm not impressed. I mean, I am going to keep it. I really like something about it, the symmetry. Do you see I have a dot here and a dot here? That's quite pretty. I like it, but I'm not necessarily over the moon for it. I was really, really looking forward for that beautiful white to yellow gradient, which some of you might know, oh, I'm such a fan of. And I got this. The funny thing is, the bud started to crack open for the 1st of April. So there we have it. That was the first prank of the day that I received. But I guess it could have been worse. I guess it could have been white, right? And I'm not saying that I don't like white Phalaenopsis, but I have a whole lot of those. Harlequins, not so much actually. Next up, let's take a look at my carnivorous plants. You might not know, but I do have 2 carnivorous plants in my collection which help me out with fungus gnats. And I do have comments from time to time asking me what to do about fungus gnats. And well, there are multiple things you can do. Obviously, you can go the insecticidal route or try to maintain things airy and rather dry, because fungus gnats really like moisture. But there are instances in which you cannot do that, particularly if you have plants which like to be moist. So the solution, which is an ecological, biological solution, is to get yourself some carnivorous plants. Not all of them will attract fungus gnats, but the sundews, Droseras, which can come in different shapes, they do attract fungus gnats a lot. Let me just get you in a little closer. This plant is covered in fungus gnats, actually all over. It produces these droplets which actually have some digestive enzymes. The fungus gnats cannot resist them because they're attracted to moisture and they get cut up because these droplets are very, very sticky. And hey presto, this is a plant that doesn't even need any type of fertilizer for the main part, because it draws all of its energy from what it hunts. If you're fancying having this plant, you don't really need much for it to grow well. You have to keep in mind a few things. Number 1, it doesn't like salts. So with the medium or soil, you need to be careful. Traditionally, people used peat moss, but that's not very efficient. So what I use is sphagnum moss as it is. And also I use my osmosis water. You can use distilled water, very, very soft water. And they need to be moist all of the time. I have it in a self-watering system, but people also use normal pots and they leave quite a bit of water in the dish, in the tray, and I did that for a lot of years. It works just fine. They are doing tremendously well under my LED panel, which is pretty bright, but it's not sunshine. Temperatures should be intermediate to warm, and that is it. You actually don't need anything else for this plant to thrive. And look at this. This is actually a flower spike. Now, I had this happen before. I totally forgot about it. This plant creates a multitude of little flowers that self-pollinate most often than not. So I will be getting some seeds pretty soon. If you guys want me to film sowing them and obtaining new sundews, I can do that. Let me know in the comments. I did it before and I got tiny little plantlets. They were very, very sweet. So there you have it. From one plant, you can get multiple rosettes and you can also get seeds. Let me show you my other Drosera. This is the other one. Both of these plants were found in a local flower shop. They didn't look good at all. I purchased them and there you go. They're really looking nice now. This one needs maintenance. Periodically, the leaves will actually fade as new leaves are produced, and you can see this one has a whole bunch of them. What I need to do is go in with the tweezers and just remove them. They come right out and everything is okay. But yeah, it's pretty much the same type of plant. It just has a different shape. And if you get into this world of carnivorous plants, you'll see there are a lot of other carnivorous plants you can have. Pingiculas are also very good for fungus gnats. I don't have one at the moment, but I think in the near future I will have. I'll link you to Brad's channel down below. He focuses a lot on carnivorous plants, pitcher plants, and all of these things. So do check the description if you want to learn more about them. I am pretty much at a entry level, let's say, with these plants. I only have as much as I know I can take care of. Okay, next up, the live sphagnum moss project. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check the description down below. I have a separate video on it. This is live sphagnum moss that I obtained from the dry one. And as I told you in the previous video, I would make a little test, try to water one with plain water and the other one with the quantum orchid solution. I don't see any difference really. I don't believe that that one fed the moss in any way. It didn't kill it, it didn't do anything bad, that's for sure. But I do believe it didn't make a tremendous difference. Yet again, this type of moss likes a lot of humidity, so I have it in a self-watering setup here, but it doesn't grow that fast, I have to say, in comparison with the other moss that I cultivated, which I will show you in a little second. But yeah, look at that, it started to produce longer and longer strains. Now, I did notice that in the warmest days when the ventilation was pretty, let's say, intense in my growth space due to the windows and the fan, I do see that some of the strains have dried a little bit on top. So yeah, this moss does not like wind as it was and dry air or drier air. It likes a lot of water. So definitely I find it a lot more difficult to grow, let's say, than the other typical moss, which we shall see. I don't have a name for that moss, but there it is. It's still around and I will use it in a container. I just find it to be quite finicky, to be fully honest. It's a wonderful looking moss, but the other moss, I like it a little more because it's just much easier to maintain. So let's just look at the other one now. There it is. I don't know what type of moss this is. It came on the top of the pot of this orchid. This is a Masdevallia, by the way. So I harvest all the strains that I could see, and I put them on top of fresh new sphagnum moss in this pot, which is a self-watering pot, always stays moist. And look at that, it spread so incredibly fast. This I started much later than the sphagnum moss, and it's already almost taking over the pot. It's absolutely wonderful. And again, it looks, oh, it's so fluffy. Yeah, it looks fluffy and it is actually pretty fluffy. So I want to start a culture of this moss. If you guys again want me to make a video on it, I will, just let me know. And actually on my previous video, somebody left me a comment with a YouTube channel that deals with bonsais and actually cultivates moss on their bonsais. They work with different types of forest mosses. But there is a video in which the person shows how to propagate this moss through the spores. And I absolutely want to do that because on top of my moss, do you see those little capsules? They look like musical notes, kinda. Yeah, those are some capsules which contain the spores. And up close, the spores are this orange dust, maybe depends on the moss variety, but yeah, they're like a dust. If you get that dust and place it on a suitable media, let's say wet sphagnum moss, theoretically, they should just start to grow and propagate the moss. And I absolutely want to do that. I find it so beautiful as a top layer, isn't it? And I think this moss does well in my conditions. Obviously, different mosses will perform differently in certain conditions. And I don't think sphagnum moss is the ideal moss for my environment. It's more of a cool growing moss and very high humidity moss, but this stuff, oh, this stuff just grows. And if it does like my environment, well, I want to have more of this. There is a catch though with this moss. Let me show you. So there is my bulbophyllum orchid, and as you can see, it does have a patch of moss as well. This moss is very common on orchids, so I'm guessing all nurseries do have spores of this moss. It just develops wherever it finds perfect conditions. So look what happened here. I placed this orchid in full sphagnum moss. You cannot see it because this is not a transparent pot, but it is full sphagnum moss, self-watering pot, and as a top layer I used bark. Wherever the bark is kind of dry, the moss didn't spread, and this is happening all over the place. Can we see the moss just stops here? I have this orchid for a year now. This is how much it grew in 1 year, which obviously means that the moss does not like the bark here. So I think I will remove the bark layer and just let this moss spread, go wild, because it does grow so fast. I also see it has spores formed, and I do want to extend it to other orchids which are in full moss or sit in moisture pretty much all the time, such as the bulbophyllums, masdevallias. I'm pretty sure that on cattleyas and other things it will not work, but there are orchids that I always keep wet because that's how they like things, such as the Miltoniopsis, Nellie Eiler, Oncidiums, well, the Odontoglossum side. You know, all of these things, wouldn't they look pretty with such a lovely green bed of moss? I think they would, so I want to cultivate it on a larger scale, let's say. And if you want me to film the procedure and my attempt, hopefully successful attempt, then let me know in the comments down below. Alright, so with that said, you know the drill. Like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, other fun orchid subjects, turn on notifications, and if you really enjoy my channel and would like to support it and help it grow and develop into new and exciting stuff, do consider visiting the merch store, links down below in the description, and I thank you all so much. With that said, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!